Welcome back, Tiger Tamers. I am Lupine Fiasco, this is Daily Fab Gameplay, and today I will be giving my report on the WINneapolis calling from this last weekend. This is the follow-up to yesterday's video that was about Nationals, and the week leading up to it, today, Saturday, and Sunday, because we are actually Day 2 calling players. We'll incorporate the calling, how the weekend ended, and a few other loose ends. I want to start by thanking everyone who came up to me this weekend and said hi. It is really gratifying to me when you recognize me and when you tell me how much you enjoy Daily Fab Gameplay or how much you learned. A lot of you told me that you don't play Kayo or Fi, but you still watch, and I just really appreciate that. And I'm still a little frazzled. Should have said that in yesterday's video, but I am saying it now. Thank you so much. It means the world to me that you watch every day, or at least when you have time, and that you care enough to actually come up to me and say that. A lot of you were surprised that I am a real person. Yes, I do exist. I am not a VTuber. I do actually play Flesh and Blood, and sometimes I play it well. The special moments to me from the weekend were when I was not recognized in hilarious fashion. For example, my first round of Nationals, sitting next to James Cerulean Silver and his opponent, they were talking about a Kayo mirror, and James's opponent looks at me and says, well, if you want to know what list I'm on, it's his list. James and I shared a look where he looked to me as to say, who are you and why should I know your list? And I looked at him to say, it doesn't matter and it's okay. And then on the calling day 2, I sat down against an opponent who said, wait, you're Lupine Fiasco, because our pairings listed my real name, John Cooper. And I assume that this is Majin's fault, that Majin Bey having his gamertag YouTube handle as his Flesh and Blood name has disqualified the rest of us from that honor. So yes, if you get paired against John Cooper in an event, it is me. Speaking about the calling itself, I was not super excited heading into it. As you know from my Nationals video, I did not do so hot, especially in CC. Finished the CC portion with a record of 1-3 and was generally just dooming about Kayo, comparing him to Zen, saying, well, it's just a worse aggro deck. Why would I play the worst aggro deck? It doesn't have as good as numbers. I should have learned Zen in the last 2 weeks. This is all my fault, etc. And based on the calling meta breakdown you see here, that fear was pretty justified. If I'm feeling that Kayo's worst matchups are Zen and Azalea, well, I'm gonna be seeing a lot of them. Zen and Azalea together made up more than 20% of the meta, and Kayo can have legs into both of those heroes, but it is a tricky matchup. When playing against Zen, Kayo needs to draw well and have some RNG on his side. Ideally, you're sending Pulping into Disruption, Wild Ride into Disruption. If you're just sending a 4-card 6 by playing a Command and Conquer, then arsenaling something and taking an intellect penalty, you're not going to beat Zen. Or if you are blocking 6 and attacking for 6, you're probably not going to beat Zen because Zen has armor. And against Azalea, you really need them to draw poorly, miss on Disruption at some point, be that no red in the ledger, no fatigue shot, no frailty on a turn when we're trying to pop off, and then you need to be able to pop off. So just generally, I was not feeling great about the calling. And this calling, for me, really emphasizes the point that it is better to be lucky than good. And I'll explain in a bit. You'll see what I mean as I get through these matches. But with the preamble out of the way, again, thank you to everyone who said hi. Thank you to everyone who told me how much they love the content. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me that you're here. And sort of my general doomer attitude about Kayo, we will talk about the games themselves. 10 o'clock rolls around. round 1 starts and pairs me against Hatchet's Dorinthea. And what's funny is that Hatchet's Dory is not a favored matchup. Warrior has never been favored for Kayo because the value from Valiant Dynamo matches the value from Might. And Dorinthea doesn't have to hit to get go again because she either has agility or a Blade Runner or Glint the Quicksilver, so she is accumulating value and can generally just outlast by playing defense reactions. Steel Blade Shunt plus Fiendal Spring Tunic is a 1-card 6, Hold the Line on a Blood Rush turn is a 1-card 5, and all the while she is just applying pressure that, while not very impactful, just adds up over the course of a game until she can eventually get there with a few 3 Chainlink Hatchet turns fueled by Hit and Run, Blade Runner, Agility Token, etc. But despite being unfavored, this matchup feels like home. You know, Zen is a new hero, Enigma's a new hero, Azalea has gone through some changes. They're all new and confusing. And Dorinthea is like, you know what? This is where we came from. This is the heavy hitters meta. And we know how to play against Hatchet's Dorinthea because even if it isn't favored, it's very winnable. And we won this game. We won the die roll. We chose to go first. Turn 1, we threw some damage, Arsenal the Blood Rush Bellow. On our opponent's first turn, they played a Command and Conquer for 6. We block for 6. They play Fatal Engagement, and we say, oh, okay. So not a great start, a bit inauspicious at that, but overall this was the standard Hatchet's Dory game. We took our value where we could get it, and we waited for these big turns. For example, at one point we did play a Cast Bones, which let us pull off a 27-point double Bear Fangs, Mandible Claw, Bear Fangs, which really stole tempo, really put the life totals back in our favor. At another point, we unfortunately discarded our second Cast Bones to a Wild Ride. That was an interesting situation where we had an arsenal. We had a blue, a Wild Ride, and a Cast Bones in our hand, and our arsenal, as I recall, was more or less unplayable. It might have been a Swing Big or a Pack Hunt, just something without go again. And we said, well, we can overpitch to play this Wild Ride, which empties our hand. We draw, discard something off the top of our deck. We send 6 with go again, make a Might, and pass. Or we can pitch our blue, play our Wild Ride, and have a 50% chance at having an insane turn by keeping our Cast Bones from the discard and then playing it. And we did miss that 50%. We discarded the Cast Bones, but it was at least a calculated risk, because if we overpitch it or if we just play it, then we are taking an intellect penalty and really not getting much upside from doing that. We lost 1 point of value from a missed KO trigger, but overall I felt like that was a good decision. I felt okay about taking that 50-50 chance. Overall, we did get there in this game with some good blocks. For example, we flesh-bagged an obvious Blade Runner that prevented quite a bit more damage than just 2, and we got a late Blood Rush Bellow for lethal. So 1-0 in the calling, moving into round 2 against an Azalea. We win this game, and this is really the first instance of being better, it being better to be lucky than good. We had no business winning this game. I lost the die roll. I was put going second. I saw 2 reds in the top 18 cards of my deck. Every turn we are sending either on or below rate damage. We're blocking for 6 and attacking for 6. Or we're blocking for 3 and attacking with Assault and Battery and Beating Chest. Right? These are really bad turns. And more or less through no fault of our own, our opponent is playing well, but it isn't like Red in the Ledger is really screwing up our turns, or Fatigue Shot is getting the 1 for 8 value that we were seeing in our Azalea games at Nationals. We just weren't drawing well. Our hands sucked. And eventually, we're down 8 points. We're at 14. Our opponent, I believe, is at 22. and we just managed to catch them with a hand that doesn't disrupt. It might have been Amplifying Arrow plus Frailty, Laced with Frailty plus Laced with Blood Rot. And we can take the 10, we respond with a 28 damage Savage Sash Blood Rush turn, which we followed up with a 15 damage 3-card Blood Rush. And that can happen. Kayo still has his Oops I Win turns, which I think is a big reason why he still has legs in this meta. And it gave us life in this game. We should not have won this game and just managed to spike 43 damage over 2 turns, which our Azalea couldn't keep up with. We win the game. Funnily enough about this game, in the table next to us, our opponents end up getting deck checked for 30 minutes. So we had quite a bit of downtime after this round. So that was interesting to watch. My opponent and I kept shooting looks over to the right of us whenever the judges would come back like, ooh, what's going to happen here? One of the players forgot to register their Arcane Barrier equipment, but also didn't need it in that matchup. So they ended up getting an intellect penalty as opposed to a ban, a disqualification or something, along those lines. So that was just a fun little happening in the calling round 2. We win, we're up 2-0. I briefly considered dropping, salvaging my elo from Nationals the day before, and wandering off to play side events, try to get some cold foil tokens, but similar to yesterday, that isn't fun to talk about. So we swallowed our ladder anxiety and proceeded on to round 3 against New. As you know by watching this channel, we have plenty of experience against New. We have played New many more times than I would care to do so. And while we won this game, it was very close. This was a Fatigue New, which I haven't really played against. I played a lot against aggro New, maybe some mid-rangey decks that are more interested in blocking, but they are ultimately looking to keep 2 or 3 cards to send disruptive attacks that whittle us down before they can kill us with some big coordinated, here's 4 blues from your banish zone. And this New was playing cards that I've never seen in Constructed before, specifically Intimate Inducement. We lose the die roll, we are put second. I send, I think, a pack hunt on turn 1 just to filter my hand, and it gets blocked by red Intimate Inducement, which I look at and say, that's weird, and then don't think anything about it until many turns later, where I say, you know what? I'm getting fatigued. Had I known that I was getting fatigued, I would have put many more cards in my sideboard, or at least been a little more conservative with my pitch stacking. As it was, I was just sending the most efficient line every turn, and while that is generally enough to get you there over New, if she is playing 12 to 15 defense reactions, and generally looking to strip your hand of its blues with Siren Call, or take your Blood Rush Bellows from your deck with Intimate Inducement, you are going to run into some trouble. So we did have this plan of not blocking. We saw our opponent get very unlucky with their reactions, as in they never really played any attack reactions. Just based on how their hands were lining up to our aggression, they ended up blocking with Siren's Call and Just a Nick rather than playing them. We never got hit by an Intimate Inducement that took anything impactful from our deck. Our opponent had very unimpactful Codex of Frailty turns. And we had some fine Blood Rush Bellows that did line up poorly with our opponent's defense reactions, but that was still keeping them off balance and on the back foot. They did stabilize towards the end of the game. As I found in testing, New, similar to Warriors in this regard, they can go down on life early, but have a really interesting late game where they can just sustain and wait for Kayo to run out of cards. And that seemed to be how this game was going. We barely got there. We won this game with no cards in our deck and 3 cards in our hand at the start of the turn. We had 1 turn to win this game, and we just barely got there with a might and an agility on the board. we play our blue Smash Instinct to intimidate a card away from our opponent, and as the Intimidate resolves, they look at their 3 remaining cards and just scowl. Our opponent at the time had 3 blocks and 1 Transcend Instant in their hand, and we won the 75% chance to banish a block. So Smash Instinct gets covered for 6, and then Mandible Claw is enough to kill our opponent from 2. I want to give a special shout out to the blue Mighty Windup that I did not discard as a response to a Siren's Call because I am a bad player. Turns out that when your opponent Siren's Calls you and you have 1 blue in your hand with the instant speed ability to discard it, you should do that instead of letting them just take your blue and draw a card from Siren's Call. Dummy. We're 3-0. We proceed into our 4th round, which is against a Kano, and we manage to win this game as well. We win the die roll, and we choose to go second. We have AB3, so we can just pitch down to whatever Kano is doing on his first turn. We're hoping they don't spike an energy potion or a potion of deja vu. Our Kano did get an E-Pot, and I may have played a little fast and loose with pitching my blues, as I was usually going shields down on turns 1 and 2, where I'm just playing out my hand, I'm not keeping anything to arsenal, which means that I'm not holding on to any resources to pitch to Arcane Barrier if Kano decides to use priority at the end of my turn. Now, the upside of just sending all this aggression is that I was able to present lethal on turn 4 for exact damage after remembering that my claw does in fact attack for 3. I'm going to blame hunger here. This is an ongoing theme that I did not have enough snacks for this event, but in trying to piece this turn together, I, for some reason, was under the impression that my Mandible Claw would attack for 2, and that I would be 1 short of killing my Kano opponent. And I think I decided to just go for it, put them to 1, and hope they couldn't kill me on their next turn or my next turn. And in that moment realized, oh right, this does kill them, and that forced Kano to go for it rather than just block out and try to sustain. Our Kano plays 3 Kindles all on that same turn in that priority window. The first Kindle draws a blue, which pitches into flipping a red. The second Kindle draws a blue, which pitches into flipping a red. The third Kindle draws a red, which, when combined with Energy Potion, is just a little bit short of killing me. This Kano had Tome of Aetherwind and Blazing Aether in Banish, as well as Aether Wildfire in hand and Arsenal, and I believe the Tome of Aetherwind might have drawn a blue and a red. Maybe it was 2 reds. It wasn't enough for Kano to kill me, so we end up taking a bunch of damage from a Scalding Rain with triple Kindle with the Blazing Aether follow-up, but we can Arcane Barrier much of that. I did freak out and use my Spell Void, which I was not supposed to do. I should have taken a little more damage this turn once it became clear that the Kindles were not empowering an Aether Wildfire. If we're just taking Scalding Rain for 6 followed by Blazing Aether, I mean, we're going to AB3, but we don't need to Spell Void that. We can save the Spell Void just in case we don't win the game on our next turn, which we are able to do with a Pulping that did hit its discard trigger. So we've got our Kano at 3, our Pulping comes in for 7 with Dominate. I did break Savage Sash before playing the Pulping just as insurance to float an extra resource so that Kano can't kill us, and ended up holding 4 resources along with the floating 2. So we get there with the Pulping. Great turn overall. Kano walked me through how if one of the reds had been a blue, we'd just blow up instantly. And, that is how it goes. Kano do be like that sometimes. May all of your Kanos flip blues and draw reds. We're 4-0 going into the 5th round. We sit down against our first Zen of the day. Unfortunately, this was a NorCal local. This was my buddy Carlos. We know each other. We play against each other at ProQuests and RTNs. A lot of NorCal players did very well in the calling. We had a lot of NorCal players make day 2. I'm really proud of everyone. Carlos, fortunately, was my only team kill of the day, though I was certainly afraid looking at the top tables that I was going to run into other friends and have to throw hands. We win the die roll, we go second, and even starting with that die roll, everything that could go right did go right. Our Zen does very minimal damage on turn 0, not that we would expect them to really go ham. Our turn 1, we throw a CNC for 7. Our turn 2, we wild ride for 6, followed by send packing for 6. Turn 3, we have an agility, so we're able to play weakest link for 7, and then bear fangs for 8. Turn 4, we have agility, we CNC for 8, swing big for 8, and then turn 5, we kill. We really were new in this game, or Azalea, whatever, your favorite flavor of chaining disruption together. We just got there, and this is how Kayo can beat Zen. You need to chain disruption, and you need to pair it with other sources of damage, because Zen is not going to block your wild ride. He's not going to block your pulping. He's not going to block your agility bear fangs. He might put equipment in front of it when he's going to break traverse or stride and try to pop off. But overall, Zen is going to keep 4 cards. So if you can lead with a wild ride or a pulping, Zen isn't going to block it, and then you hit him with the disruption that he does need to block. Or you lead with the disruption, and he needs to block it, and then you hit him with the bear fangs or the swing big, and maybe he blocks a little more aggressively now that he knows that he can't just kill you. But even then, Zen is ninja. So if you throw a swing big for 8, and he's blocking with like spinning wheel kick and harmony of the hunt, you're in a solid position. So we're 5-0. We're going into round 6. This calling has 8 rounds, and any player who is X2 or better at the end of the day makes day 2. So effectively, this is our win it in. And we have a little insurance where if we lose this game, we have another chance. We sit down against Kassai. This is the same Kassai that won Friday's ProQuest Plus. His name is Colin, really nice guy, really enjoyed talking to him and playing against him. But again, a heavy hitter's familiar matchup. But Kassai is a lot scarier than Dorinthea. Kassai is building towards something, whether that be raise an army or blood on her hands. Dorinthea just kind of throws damage and is very predictable. Kassai can chip in some damage as the game goes on, make her gold, make her copper, and then just burst us for 20. So we were a little wary heading into this game, and we knew, just from reading the Fab website, that this is a ProQuest winner winning Kassai. And if Kassai is winning ProQuest in a meta full of New, Enigma, and Zen, these are the ones that you're afraid of. So we win the die roll, we choose to go first, and things just kind of went right. Everything that needed to happen did happen. We play 2 cast bones, and they both got 6 hits. And this is from having no might on the table at all, so we really needed to get lucky on these 2 cast bones. Blocks lined up very well with spoils of war turns. I believe Kassai played 2 spoils and had to block with the 3rd, and neither spoils was backed up by a Blade Runner or especially a Blade Flurry. So if we're blocking Centauri Saber for 5, that 5 is just covered. It's blocked out because Kassai doesn't make copper. Or if we get hit by Hot Streak for 2, there's nothing pushing, there's no second swing pushing that Hot Streak over blocking with Scabskin Leathers. So Kassai ends up not having very much copper, not having very much gold, draws into a fairly weak hand that they use to block out a big turn of ours, but then have this yellow card left that they pitch into a cold to draw a card, and then pitch that card to draw a new one. So now Kassai has broken her gold, and raise an army is no longer a win con. This game still came down to the wire. I believe we're at 3 when the game ended. I never felt comfortable, despite having a pretty good life lead early on. Just Kassai whittles us down, is able to refresh the Valiant Dynamo, is able to block for 7 or 8 damage off of 2 cards, and then return 2 cards on offense. But we did manage to squeak this game out with a very similar Blood Rush Bellow to how we won our Zen game at Nationals, where we have that floating resource, 2 cards in hand, play the Blood Rush, discard, and just Hail Mary off the top of our deck. And in this case, we managed to find a pack hunt that intimidated one of Kassai's cards, left her unable to block lethal damage. So we get the win. We are 6-0. We know that we day 2. We can lose our next 2 games. We don't want to. Going 8-0 on calling day 1 would be fantastic and would be great for my chances of top 8ing on day 2. But at the very least, we have made calling day 2. We don't have to play in the Battle Hardened, a 9 rounds of Swiss Battle Hardened. We get to dodge it, and we feel fantastic. Round 7, we play a Kayo mirror, and everything goes wrong. As much as things have been going right today, this game, it all goes wrong. We win the die roll, we do choose to go second, and from there, we just drew like poop. My opponent and I both acknowledged this. We talked about it after the game, where draw variance really was how this game ended. We can compare the tokens that I made to the tokens my opponent made, which was few might tokens compared to many might tokens. We can compare the 3 Blood Rush Bellows that my opponent played to the 1 Blood Rush Bellow that I play. We had to use our Flesh Bag first, which is never a good sign in this matchup. Overall, despite winning the die roll and feeling good about being able to go second, we just got outdrew by our opponent, and sometimes that does happen. The whole point of this channel is to review our games and really confirm that we could have played better, we could have made different decisions that would have resulted in a win rather than a loss, but sometimes you do just lose games to variance. There isn't a ton else to say about this game. Our opponent was very friendly. It was a pleasant game, at least from an emotional standpoint, though from a in-game perspective, we got our butts kicked, and it put us at 6-1 going into the last round of the day, which was against a Prism. We win this game. We lose the die roll. We were put going second, and from there, we played the worst game against Prism that I have ever intentionally played. This was a very interesting Prism game. For one thing, our opponent was not on Vestige of Soul, they were on Empyrean Rapture. If you've been watching the channel, I put up a Rapture Prism game either last week or the week before, and there are 2 fundamental differences between Rapture Prism and Vestige Prism. The first being that Rapture Prism is not trying to Arclight loop us. She is trying to send a chain of Herald, Angel, Herald, and how she is accumulating value is by hitting with a Herald, tutoring a Figment, getting to flip that Figment for free, and then being able to follow up with an Angel attack or a Herald attack, or both. The power of Vestige Prism is she gets a 2-card 11. The other thing it means is that because she is not trying to ALS loop us, she generally is not playing ALS period, which means we will never need to roll scabs, which means that we never need to worry about a big Blood Rush turn or Sash, Wild Ride turn getting stuffed by ALS. So, we send 14 damage plus disruption on our turn 1. Our opponent takes it all and responds with a turn 2 Library of Solana, which is horrifying because it means they have Intellect 5 if they're doing normal Prism things. I got so excited that I was going to draw 2 Beast Withins, be able to discard both of them to break the library, and then draw 2 new cards. Unfortunately, it never happened. We follow up that big 14 damage turn with some more heat. Opponent goes down to 7 in order to play a Passing Mirage alongside their library, at which point our plan changed from disciplined board control, sort of clearing auras, blocking with 6 power attacks to pop Phantasm, and all of this other disciplined play into, I am going to block haphazardly, block very aggressively with armor, prevent you from getting any sort of merciful retribution value, and I am just going to try to slowly disrupt you with CNCs and send packing until I can sash Blood Rush you with a Wild Ride and Arsenal, and that is exactly what happened. I just sustained. I sent all of my damage face. I was not targeting angels. I was not trying to clear the passing mirage. I was not trying to do anything to stop Prism from doing Prism things, besides just sending damage at her face and taking cards out of her hand so that she couldn't kill me with a Wild Ride in my arsenal until I found a Blood Rush Bellow and a blue with 2 other cards. We play the Blood Rush, we break Sash, we send 27 damage at Prism's face, and because she took so much damage at the start of the game to set up this library and passing mirage, she's just dead. So we end day 1 with a record of 7-1. Our only loss is in round 7, so our tiebreakers are looking fantastic. This is the best result I've ever had on day 1 of a calling, and we feel really good going home for the night after hitting drinks with friends, celebrating the success of NorCal, as we have, I believe there were 4 of us at the bar that were in the calling day 2, and our friend France had turned a 4-3 nationals record from day 1 into, I believe, 8-6 or 9-5 on day 2, just from winning out in CC. Fantastic results all around. Everyone was really happy. I got terrible sleep that night because I was so excited about calling day 2, and that did not serve me very well. It taught me something, that little break between day 1 and day 2, that I need to work on really waking up in the morning for these big events. I've talked previously about how I have a habit of losing round 1 of an RTN or a Pro Quest, and that gets me to top 8, but it's always in a lower seed, so I have a hard time making it to the finals. And as I sat down for my first round of day 2, 9 in the morning, after getting bad sleep, I could already tell that I was not in a great mental state. I should not be playing this game. That if I could just give myself 2 more hours to wake up, I'd be in a great position, but this is a scheduled event. We don't have 2 hours. So I need to figure out what combination of coffee, energy drink, non-addictive drug I can take to really just pep up in the morning, or push-ups or jumping jacks or something. Because we sit down against this Kano, we lose the game just based off of a series of horrendous punts that I'm still very irritated about. We lose the die roll. We are put going second, which is exactly what we wanted to do, and find ourselves with an early Blood Rush Bellow, so we have this real potential to push lethal early, and we miss it twice. The first thing that happens is we have a hand that has a Blood Rush Bellow in Arsenal, a random blue, a blue Agile Windup, a red Wild Ride, and a Beast Within. And I see this hand, and my first thought is, I need to get down to 2 cards in hand, a blue and a Beast Within, so that I am forced to discard Beast Within. For one thing, just keep the 5-card Blood Rush. It's fine. It's Kano. You're going to have an outlet to pitch extra resources if I just draw into a bunch of blues without go again. It's okay. Kano's at 22, and with a 5-card Blood Rush where we have multiple chances at discarding a Beast Within, we can very easily kill him from there. But I just am fixated on this Beast Within line, so Kano either arcs me for 2 on his turn. I pitch the Wild Ride to AB1. At the end of Kano's turn, I discard my Agile windup to make an agility, and on my turn, I pitch the blue, play Blood Rush, discard Beast Within. Kano responds to the Beast Within trigger by popping off, and after everything is said and done, I am sitting at 5 health, no resources floating, with a Beast Within trigger on the stack. Beast Within resolves, flips a Blood Rush Bellow. Ouch. Beast Within resolves, flips a Runner, which goes to hand. I'm at 4 life. Blood Rush Bellow draws me Runner, E-Strike. So now I am sitting, staring at 3 reds with no resources. I have might and agility. So if you are in a better mental place than I am, you already know what I'm supposed to do with this hand. Play E-Strike, bottom a Runner, give it draw a card, hope to draw into a blue so that I can break my Savage Sash to Mandible Claw Runner. What I do instead is break Savage Sash, play Runner by pitching E-Strike to attack for 9 with Go again, refresh my agility, arsenal the Runner, and have the saddest Blood Rush turn of my life. I determine later, of course, keep the 5-card Blood Rush hand, otherwise E-Strike, look to draw a card. I think our Kano was at 22, so it isn't like they were just dead if I see the E-Strike Runner line, but it would have at least put them much lower on life to threaten lethal on my next turn, which I was unable to do. Instead, I put them to 1. Kano kills me, even without his combo pieces, because I am at 4. And I realize that I have somehow punted this game, though I am also irritated that I found 3 reds on my Blood Rush turn instead of any blues. But I'm thinking, let's shake the nerves off, let's get into the next round, we'll win it there, and we don't. We sit down against a Prism. This one reveals Vestige of Soul, so we know we are in for that traditional ALS loot Prism game. We win the die roll, we choose to go first, we started very well. Prism has an awkward draw and just plays an Arclight that isn't protecting anything, so we don't need to worry about rolling our scabs. We just kill the ALS and pass. The second ALS comes down protecting Soraya and Merciful Retribution. And because I don't run Gambler's Gloves, I am afraid of the gloves that my opponent has. So rather than rolling, which would have been correct, I just attack ALS and pass, which gives my opponent much more latitude to attack with Soraya, get more value, and play more auras. At another point, I choose to Arsenal Weakest Link and not a Wild Ride, which was a big mistake because a Wild Ride would have let me push through Soraya and deal damage to Prism's face, as opposed to just clawing and passing. 2 more Merciful Retributions come down. At this point, I'm taking 3 points of damage every time a Spectral Shield breaks or a Ponder breaks. This is the first time that I've seen Dissolve Reality in practice. And while Dissolve Reality never got a Blood Rush or a Pulping or a Wild Ride from my arsenal, Ponder is breaking and dealing 3 points of damage to me, and I only have 4-card hands to play with rather than 5. Once Aegis comes down, I just scooped. I believe at this point I was at 12. I'm at lower life than Prism. I am unable to put big hands together that push past Prism's defenses. And every time a Spectral Shield breaks, I'm taking 3 points of damage. So rather than play it out, we just scoop. I don't believe the game was winnable at that point. I don't believe the game was winnable after that second ALS. I needed to roll scabs. Had I rolled a 4, 5, or 6, my opponent would have broken Gambler's Gloves, which means I would have needed to roll 4, 5, or 6 again. It would have been very difficult. It isn't impossible. But really what went wrong here, aside from not rolling scabs, was our opponent drew the wrong half of their deck first. I had a hand that was Wreck-a-Rump and Swing Big for multiple turns because I was just holding on to them while I was attacking these Arclight Sentinels. And had our opponent been sending Heralds, we could have popped them, we would have been in a great spot. But what our opponent was doing instead was playing Merciful Retribution, which is a lot harder for us to deal with. So we lose this game. At this point, we have an 0-2 record on day 2. Overall, we are 7-3. We are definitely dead for top 8. We're still alive for top 16. We're very alive for top 32 and top 48, which cashes. So we're feeling okay. Generally, we're feeling bad about how our games have gone, but we're feeling okay overall. Round 3 puts us against a new, and we win this game. We lost the die roll. We were put going second, which we are very happy for. This was a heavily reaction-based list, very aggressive new, and I was very happy to see it. I had a tip from a buddy going into this round that this new was reaction-heavy and playing Traverse the Universe rather than Recurring Nightmares. So I actually did side in my weakest links for this matchup, and that paid off. So if you are at an event with buddies, get the scoop. Announce the name of your opponent before you all sit down, because it's possible that one of you has played them and can give you some insight. So as we know, news reactions are below rate, while Kayo is significantly above rate. So if we were just racing anew, well, this goes back to the YouTube videos I've been posting. Hiss is a 1 for 3. Venomous Bite is a 1 for 4. Just a Nick is a 0 for 5, which is great, but can only be played on 1 power attacks, so is effectively a 2-card 6. Meanwhile, Kayo is pumping out 4-card 15s, 2-card 9s, right? We are very above rate. So I took an early lead in this game and never let go, and even after a little grinding, we were able to get there with a comfortable life total. I had a good chat with this opponent after the game. I told them about the fatigue new that I had beaten on day 1, and they gave me their thoughts on sort of how all the assassins work, where Arachne is the fatigue assassin, Uzuri is the mid-range assassin, who plays 2-card hands really well, and Nu is the aggro assassin. I don't know anything about that. I'm a brute player. We don't worry too much about difficult concepts like fatigue or blocking, but it was interesting to me. Round 4, we sit down against our second Zen of the event. We win this game. We lose the die roll. Our Zen puts us second. I still contend that this is where Kayo wants to be, despite all of the shenaniganery that Zen can pump out on turn 0. For one thing, they can transcend anyway. For another, aggro mirrors reward whoever gets early tempo. I was able to do a good enough job chaining disruption here, not nearly as good as on day 1, but we kept Zen off of that big pop-off, and were able to put some Blood Rush Bellows together. I think I drew all 3 in this game, so maybe a bit of a high roll on my end, but certainly what we need to beat Zen, and I'm never going to complain about high rolling in a ranked event like this. At this point, we are 9-3, feeling good, get paired against our last opponent of the day, who is Yuki Lee Bender. Never played against Yuki before, played against very few pro players overall. It's really gratifying to have played against a pro player, feeling like, hey, you know what, we're finally at that position where we can hang with the best of the best. Now, based on how this game went, we cannot hang with the best of the best. Yuki destroyed us, really took us to task, but it at least made me feel good to get to play against her. We win the die roll, we choose to go second, and she just stomps me. Her turn 1 was play Wind Chakra, pass. Our turn 1, we had a choice between attacking with the weakest link and passing, or attacking with Bare Fangs and passing, and I thought, well, Bare Fangs is a 2-card 9. That sets us up with a might to hit with a 7-power weakest link on our next turn. Weakest link is a 2-card 6 that may or may not matter. We arsenal a Bare Fangs, and then I guess we're done now. So I sent the Bare Fangs. Yuki takes 8, goes to 32, then proceeds to play 2 Art of Wars, transcends 3 times, and ends up dealing 33 damage while having a card in banish from the Scowling Fleshbag Intimidate and a card in hand that she apparently just couldn't work into the turn cycle at all. So, ow. That didn't feel great. At the same time, I just haven't run into the Zen, mega high roll yet. So I was excited to actually see it happen. I'd heard all these horror stories about Zen with 50 damage turns, and I'm like, well, just use Fleshbag, just block well, what's the problem? The problem is it doesn't matter because she still just kills you. But that was really cool to see. So we lose that game. Yuki followed up the 33 damage double Art of War turn with a 3-card block of my 7 power weakest link. With the chi that she has in her hand, she pitches into Zen to find a Tiger Swipe, plays Crouching Tiger for 0, then Tiger Swipe for 5 because of its combo and Tiger Stripe Shuko. I thought, wow, a 1-card 5 is pretty good. And then she just did another 5-card 25. So that killed me. That's a pretty good way to kill me. But fun game. Yuki and I had a fun chat afterwards. And that was really cool. So we did not make top 8. Our final record was 9-4. I've been here before. The Las Vegas calling, I had a 9-4 record with 5. That placed me at 30th. This 9-4 record with slightly better breakers put me at 28th. So definitely an improvement in my standings based on cash distribution. I cashed out at $300, which was slightly more than the last time. So again, we can track some improvement over the last year. And overall just felt really good about that, having had a pretty abysmal Nationals day 1. I felt much better about Kayo. I still don't think that Kayo is the best aggro deck. I think that if you are playing Kayo, it's because you like Kayo. I think that Zen is absolutely where aggro players should go to. It's where I'm going to go. If you haven't noticed, you are no longer Knuckleheads. You are Tiger Tamers, because we are a Zen channel now. But for this last little hurrah on Kayo, I was glad to be able to finish so well. 9-4 is fantastic. Cashing is great. Next time, I will absolutely be shooting for top 8. I have a drive that I didn't have before. That Kano punt is going to live with me for a long time, because had I won that game, I just think the day would have been a lot different. I know for a fact that I would have played against an Uzuri in my second round, which I remember being favored. It's been a while since I've played against Uzuri, so I don't exactly remember how that matchup is supposed to go, but I remember feeling favored against it in heavy hitters. But all I think is, wow, if I won that first one, my breakers get better, maybe I do manage to get a top 8. Who knows? Certainly the goal next time, with whatever deck I'm playing. Maybe it'll be Zen. I think Aurora looks pretty cool. And I am not playing in Amsterdam, so I have nothing going on until ProQuest season. And by the time we get to ProQuest season, we'll have Rosetta. So that was my calling weekend. I finished the calling. I go play in an Oasis Respite Classic Constructed event. End up 3-1, losing to a very cool Max deck. Won enough tickets that I can buy a Cold Foil Embodiment of Lightning and a few Mistveil packs. I crack a Rainbow Foil, blanking on the name, the Enigma boots, the Legendary Illusionist boots. So overall, feel good about that. Good return on my investment. Go eat dinner with friends, fly out the next day, get home, record some videos. Here we are. So I hope you enjoyed this report. I don't know that I said anything particularly educational, but if you did learn something, be sure to take that like button to Pound Town. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. I have a Patreon. I have an X. Those URLs are in the video description below. I will be back tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the KO list that I brought with me to Nationals, which is slightly different from the KO list I've been playing on the channel. And I want to take a look at the second place Nationals KO deck, which was piloted by Andrew Rothermel. I think Andrew made some really interesting choices. I want to do a side-by-side comparison of my KO deck versus their KO deck. Talk about some of the changes that I'll be making to my KO deck based on Andrew's ideas. And I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited to leave all of the dedicated Kayo players with something on my way out. But until then, no matter what you do, enjoy yourselves. Have a happy Friday. Catch me back here tomorrow for more Daily Fab gameplay. And until then, take care.